You think you chose this life. You think the job, the routine, the circle of people around you, that all of this was decided by you, freely, with full awareness. But if someone pulled you aside 5 years ago and showed you exactly where you would be standing today, same habits, same doubts, same quiet frustration, you would have said no. You would have said that is not the plan. And yet here you are. Not because you failed, but because something designed this outcome for you. And you never saw it happening. Niccolo Machiavelli identified this mechanism 500 years ago, and what he understood about power, control, and human behavior is so uncomfortable that most people refuse to hear it. But you are still here, so let us find out which side of this you are actually on. There is a reason your life feels like it is moving without going anywhere. It is not laziness. It is not bad luck. It is not a lack of talent. It is something far more precise than any of those explanations, and far harder to accept. Your life is operating inside a structure you did not build, did not approve, and in most cases have never even examined. It was assembled around you slowly, piece by piece, through years of repetition, social pressure, and inherited assumptions that you mistook for your own beliefs. Machiavelli wrote extensively about how populations are governed, not through visible force, but through the careful management of perception. He understood that the most effective control is the kind that feels like freedom. Give people enough options within a narrow range, and they will believe they are choosing. Give them comfort inside a boundary, and they will defend that boundary as if it were sacred. This is not a theory about politics. This is how your daily life functions. You wake at a certain hour, you consume certain information, you react to certain triggers, you avoid certain risks, and you do all of this automatically, not because you decided to, but because the pattern has been running so long it feels like identity. The word Machiavelli used was ordini, the deep structures of order that hold a system in place. He applied it to states and institutions, but the same principle applies to an individual life. Your ordini are the invisible rules, the unspoken agreements, the inherited habits that dictate 90% of your behavior before you even open your eyes in the morning. And here's what makes this dangerous. You cannot fight what you cannot see. Most people spend their entire lives optimizing inside the structure, working harder, earning more, adjusting the surface, without ever questioning the structure itself. They rearrange furniture inside a room they never chose to enter. That is not growth. That is maintenance. And maintenance of a system you did not design is just a sophisticated form of obedience. The reason you do not see this structure is not because it is hidden in some complex way. It is because it has been with you so long that it has become invisible through familiarity. This is a principle Machiavelli understood deeply. In The Prince, he wrote that people cling to the old order even when it harms them, because the known, no matter how limiting, feels safer than the unknown. He was describing political transitions, but the psychology is identical at the personal level. Your brain is a pattern completion machine. It does not optimize for growth. It optimizes for predictability. Every time you repeat a behavior, the neural pathway strengthens. Every time you follow the same routine, the cost of deviation increases. And after years of reinforcement, the pattern does not feel like a pattern anymore. It feels like you. This is why people defend their limitations with such conviction. When someone challenges your habits, it does not feel like they are questioning a behavior. It feels like they are questioning your identity, because the structure has fused with your sense of self. Machiavelli observed the same fusion in political life. He noted that subjects who had lived under a particular ruler for a generation would resist liberation, not because they loved the ruler, but because they could no longer imagine an alternative. The structure had become their reality. Think about that in your own life. How many of your beliefs about what is possible for you were actually tested? How many were inherited from people who never tested them either? How many of the boundaries you live inside were drawn by someone else's fear, and you simply never questioned the map? The trap works because it feels like home, and that is precisely why recognizing it requires something more than motivation. It requires a willingness to feel displaced inside your own life, temporarily homeless in the space between who you have been and who you have not yet allowed yourself to become. That displacement is where everything begins. Tell me in the comments, which structure in your life have you been defending the longest, even though you never actually chose it? Name it below. You do not need the full answer yet. Just name the structure. Subscribe if you want to keep going. What comes next changes how you see all of it. There are rules governing your behavior that no one ever formally gave you. No one sat you down and said you are not allowed to ask for more. No one handed you a contract that said ambition beyond this point is unacceptable. And yet you follow these rules every single day, automatically, without resistance, without even noticing. These are invisible agreements. They exist in the space between what you were told and what you absorbed. They were built through repetition, through watching how people reacted when someone asked for too much, reached too far, or refused to stay in their assigned place. You learned the boundaries by watching what happened to those who crossed them. And you adjusted. Quietly, completely, without anyone having to say a word. You do this when you lower your voice in a room full of people who think small. You do this when you shrink an idea before sharing it, editing it down to what feels safe. You do this when you catch yourself about to take a risk, and a voice inside you says that is not for someone like you. That voice is not yours. It is the echo of every invisible agreement you absorbed before you were old enough to question it. You believe you are wasting time. That framing is already a distortion. Your time is not being wasted. It is being taken in small, precise increments, distributed across your day so that no single loss feels significant. 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, an hour that dissolves into scrolling before you realize it has passed. By the end of the day, you feel exhausted. You feel like you were busy, but nothing moved forward. You recognize this pattern when you sit down to do meaningful work and your hand reaches for your phone within 90 seconds. You recognize it when you plan a productive evening and then lose it entirely to content you will not remember tomorrow. You recognize it when the gap between your intentions and your actions grows wider every week, and you blame yourself for lacking discipline. But this is not a discipline problem. This is an attention architecture problem. Your environment has been designed, deliberately, systematically, to fragment your focus. And fragmented focus does not produce growth. It produces the illusion of activity while your actual trajectory remains unchanged. Machiavelli noted that one of the most effective ways to neutralize an opponent is not to confront them, but to keep them occupied with matters of no consequence. Let them exhaust their energy on small engagements while the real position remains unthreatened. That is what is happening to your hours, every day. You believe your thoughts are your own, but trace them back far enough and most of them belong to your environment. The people around you set the ceiling of what you consider possible. Their conversations define the range of acceptable ambition. Their reactions teach you what is safe to want and what is dangerous to pursue. You feel this when you share an idea and the room goes quiet, not hostile, just uncomfortable. You feel it when you notice yourself automatically adjusting your language, your energy, your goals to match the people you spend the most time with. This is not influence. This is programming. Slow, invisible, constant. Machiavelli wrote that a prince is judged by the company he keeps, and that the quality of his advisors reveals the quality of his mind. He was not offering social advice. He was describing a law of human cognition. You become the average of the inputs you tolerate. If your environment operates at a certain frequency, you will tune to that frequency. Not because you are weak, because you are human. And humans are wired for social calibration above almost everything else. This may be the most dangerous pattern of all because it disguises itself as reward. You work, you endure, and then you rest. That cycle feels natural. It feels earned. But examine it closely, and you will see that the comfort phase is not recovery. It is a reset mechanism. You feel this when you start building momentum in a new direction and then reward yourself with a break that lasts 3 times longer than it should. You feel it when you make progress and immediately seek comfort, as if growth itself is something you need to recover from. Comfort is not the opposite of effort. Comfort is the mechanism that returns you to baseline. and baseline is where the structure needs you to stay. Machiavelli observed that the most stable regimes were not the harshest. They were the ones that provided just enough satisfaction to prevent revolt. Enough bread, enough spectacle. Enough comfort to make the cost of rebellion feel unnecessary. Your comfort operates the same way. It gives you just enough relief to make change feel optional. And when change feels optional, it becomes permanent delay. Machiavelli's genius was not cruelty, it was clarity. He saw the world as it operated, not as people wished it operated. And the core of his framework rests on a single principle that most people refuse to accept. Power does not flow to those who deserve it. Power flows to those who understand how it moves. This applies to nations, it applies to organizations, and it applies to your individual life with terrifying precision. The framework has 3 layers, and each one builds on the last. The first layer is recognition. You must see the structures that are shaping your behavior. Not in theory, in practice. You must identify the specific invisible agreements, attention traps, environmental influences, and comfort cycles that are keeping your life in a holding pattern. Without this recognition, every effort you make will be absorbed by the system. You will work harder inside the same structure and wonder why nothing changes. The second layer is what Machiavelli called virtue, and this word does not mean virtue in the modern sense. Virtue is the capacity to act decisively when the moment demands it. It is the willingness to break from the pattern when the pattern no longer serves you. Most people understand what they need to do. Very few possess the virtue to do it when the cost is real. The third layer is fortuna, the recognition that circumstances are always shifting and that rigid plans break under pressure. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river. When it floods, it destroys everything in its path. But the wise person builds levees in advance, not to control the river, but to direct its force. In your life, this means building systems that are resilient, not just ambitious. It means preparing for disruption rather than pretending it will not come. Most people live entirely at the mercy of fortuna because they never developed virtue, and they never developed virtue because they never achieved recognition. The 3 layers are sequential. Skip one and the others collapse. There is a critical distinction here that separates those who hear these ideas from those who are changed by them. Knowing is intellectual. You can know that your environment shapes you and still do nothing about it. You can know that comfort is a control mechanism and still reach for distraction every evening. Knowledge without application is decoration. It makes you feel informed while leaving your behavior untouched. Seeing is different. Seeing is the moment the pattern becomes visible in real time, while it is happening. You reach for your phone and you see the attention trap activating. You shrink your idea before sharing it and you see the invisible agreement enforcing itself. You choose comfort over progress and you see the reset mechanism pulling you back to baseline. That is the shift Machiavelli described when he talked about the difference between those who read history and those who understood it. Reading is passive. Understanding is active. And active understanding changes how you move through the world. Not eventually, but immediately. Once you begin to see these patterns, something uncomfortable happens. The system pushes back. Not violently, not dramatically, subtly. The people around you become slightly more resistant. Your own mind generates more doubt. The comfort you once enjoyed starts to feel like a negotiation, as if it is offering you a deal to stop looking so closely. This resistance is not a sign that you are wrong. It is confirmation that you are disrupting something real. Machiavelli wrote that the reformer has enemies in all those who profit from the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in those who might profit from the new. This is true at the political level. It is equally true at the personal level. When you change the rules of your own life, the people who were comfortable with the old rules will resist, not because they are malicious, but because your change threatens their stability. Your growth implies that their stagnation is a choice, and that implication is deeply uncomfortable. If this reframe has shifted something in you, if you can feel the weight of recognizing these patterns for the first time, a like puts this in front of someone else who is ready to see it too. This is where most people turn back. The resistance feels like proof that the old way was right. The discomfort feels like punishment for trying. But Machiavelli understood that discomfort is not the price of failure. It is the price of movement. And those who are unwilling to pay it will remain exactly where they are. So the turn arrives here, and it is quieter than you expected. There is no dramatic moment of transformation. There is no single decision that changes everything at once. There is only this: a slow, deliberate recognition that the life you have been living was not fully yours, and a willingness, fragile at first, then growing stronger, to reclaim it. The struggle you have felt is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that something inside you has been pressing against boundaries that were never designed by you. That pressure was not dysfunction. It was intelligence. Your deeper self has been trying to alert you for years, and now you have the language to understand what it was saying. You were never broken. You were contained. And there is a vast difference between those two things. The first practice is deliberate pattern interruption. Choose one automatic behavior that you engage in every day without thinking. It could be the first thing you reach for when you wake up. It could be how you spend the first hour after work. It could be the reflexive way you respond to stress. For 7 days, replace it with something intentional. Not something better, something chosen. The content of the replacement matters less than the act of choosing it consciously. You are not optimizing a habit. You are breaking the automaticity that keeps the system running without your input. Every time you feel the pull toward the old pattern, notice it. Do not fight it. Just see it. That moment of seeing, that fraction of a second between impulse and action, is where your virtue lives. The second practice targets invisible agreements directly. Spend 1 week tracking the moments you hold back, not the big decisions, the small ones, the idea you almost shared but edited down, the boundary you almost set but softened, the ambition you almost voiced but swallowed. Write each one down. Be specific. Do not analyze them yet. Just collect the evidence. At the end of the week, look at the list. You will see a pattern. There will be a common thread, a specific invisible agreement that has been governing your behavior across multiple areas of your life. You will recognize it not because someone told you about it, but because you caught it in action. That recognition is not the end. It is the starting position. From there, you begin choosing, consciously, deliberately, which agreements you keep and which ones you discard. Not all at once, one at a time. Because dismantling a structure requires precision, not force. The third practice addresses the deepest layer, your environment. You cannot think beyond the ceiling of your inputs. If every conversation you have operates within the same narrow range, your thinking will conform to that range. This is not a motivational cliché. This is cognitive science confirmed across decades of research. Your practice is this. Introduce one input that operates above your current level. One book that challenges your framework. One conversation with someone who thinks in a way that makes you uncomfortable. One environment where the standards are higher than what you are used to. Do not try to match that level immediately. Simply expose yourself to it. Let it create tension with your current patterns. That tension is not a problem. It is the mechanism through which your ceiling rises. Machiavelli did not become Machiavelli by staying inside the intellectual boundaries of his time. He studied the ancients. He placed himself in dialogue with minds that operated centuries before him, and through that exposure, he developed a capacity to see what his contemporaries could not. You do not need to study the ancients, but you do need to stop limiting your inputs to people who confirm where you already are. Remember the question from the beginning. Did you design this life, or did you fall into it? You have the answer now, and more importantly, you have the mechanism. You understand how the structure was built, how it maintains itself, and where the control points are hidden. Machiavelli wrote that there is nothing more difficult than taking the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. He was right. It is difficult. It is uncomfortable. It requires a kind of courage that most people will never exercise, not because they lack it, but because they never saw clearly enough to know it was needed. You see it now. The patterns that held you in place, the invisible agreements, the stolen attention, the environmental programming, the comfort disguised as reward, None of these were chosen by you, but what you do next is entirely your choice. And that is the most dangerous thing Machiavelli ever revealed. Not that systems control people, but that the moment a person truly sees the system, truly sees it, the system loses its grip. You are standing in that moment right now. Subscribe if you want to keep going. There is more of this waiting, and it goes deeper every time. The system only works on those who never see it. You are no longer one of them. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.